Welcome to Sonic Movidas, a musical mix of recordings and interviews celebrating the diversity of Latinx music. In this video series, we'll explore how music has inspired our everyday lives, our movements, our movidas, and our dreams. Today we are featuring vocalist and multi-instrumentalist Alex Marrero. Born to Cuban parents in Mexico City, Alex got his professional start playing in Mexico City clubs at the age of 15. He is truly one of the most multi-talented musicians I've ever met. Alex is the lead singer, frontman, and songwriter for Austin's highly celebrated Latin funk band, Brownout. And Alex is also the frontman for Brownout's Black Sabbath spin-off cover band, Brown Sabbath. He regularly performs as a drummer and percussionist with everyone from folk singer-songwriters like myself to psychedelic rock bands like Golden Dawn Orchestra. Alex is also a music educator as well as a professional bilingual voiceover actor who happens to be the official voice of the City of Austin's Capital Metro buses and trains. It is my great honor to introduce Alex Marrero.
Dicen que la distancia es el olvido, pero yo no concibo esa razón, porque yo seguiré siendo el cautivo de los caprichos de tu corazón. Supiste esclarecer mis pensamientos, la verdad que yo soñé, ahuyentaste de mí los sufrimientos en la primera noche que te amé. Hoy mi playa se viste de amargura, porque tu barca tiene que partir a cruzar otros mares. Cuida que no naufrague tu vivir. Cuando la luz del sol se esté apagando y te sientas cansada de vagar, piensa que yo por ti estaré esperando hasta que tú decidas regresar. Mis pensamientos, me diste la verdad que yo soñé, ahuyentaste de mí los sufrimientos en la primera noche que te amé. Hoy mi playa se viste de amargura, porque tu barca tiene que cruzar otros mares de locura, pero cuida que no naufrague tu vivir. Cuando la luz del sol se esté apagando y te sientas cansada de vagar, piensa que yo por ti estaré esperando hasta que tú decidas regresar.
What are your earliest memories of music?
There's usually two. One is singing like baladas or boleros to my sister when I was like 2 years old.
How sweet.
Like I always, because she was a big fan of, like a Mexican pop balladeer of the early 80s. And I remember just being in the room singing those songs to her as a little kid.
So how old was she when you were?
She was, 12, 13 years older than me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were a little bitty.
I was a little kid, yeah. That and just Cuban music playing in the house. Because my parents were Cuban exiles. Even though I grew up in Mexico City, there was always Cuban music playing in the house. And those are my two consistent earliest memories of music.
Wow. So do you remember some of the names of the artists? What records were in their collection?
Oh, you name it. I actually inherited that whole LP collection that they had. There's Pérez Prado, there's, Trio Los Panchos, which is from Mexico. There's Celia Cruz, just Benny Moré.
Yeah.
Just a wide array of Cuban music. And then Mexican music as well, because, they started listening to some of that too.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cross-pollination in those musical styles between Cuba and Mexico, as you see in boleros.
Exactly. Yeah, so I was just curious, what made you choose La Barca?
La Barca is a song that even as a young kid, for some reason, there's something in that melody that always just attracted me. It's just beautiful, and I remember hearing it as a kid, and that was, even as a teenager, when I wasn't really listening to any of that music or paying attention to that because I was into rock, whenever I heard that song, there was something about it that always drew me in. So for some reason, it's just a well-crafted song. The chord progression is beautiful. The melodies, it's just something that just kind of hooks on me every time, still to this day.
It's such a classic-sounding melody.
It really is.
It
It's
just
so
tugs
good.
on your heartstrings immediately.
It does, and there's so many amazing versions of it. So.
Yeah. Well, your version is amazing.
Well, thank you.
Really gorgeous.
Thank you.
That was such a treat to have you in the
Oh,
backyard.
that was so fun. Yes.
Okay, you grew up in Mexico City, and grew up in a Cuban household, essentially, because your parents were Cuban exiles.
Correct.
And then you go from that environment to Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Yeah, I moved here when I was 18 and learned a lot throughout the years of both music and just the region and the history of, Mexican Americans, Tejanos, that whole, because you see it when you're in Mexico, you see it a little bit differently. It's kind of hard to describe, but when you actually come here and you see how people are stuck between two worlds and what that means, it's pretty fascinating, and the things that come from it creatively are also magical, as usual.
Yeah, such a cross-pollination of so many different cultures. But yeah, how do you feel, how do you identify culturally at this point in your life after living in Austin for 20 plus years?
This was something that kind of bothered me in my 20s when I was still trying to figure out where I fit into the world, because I realized I've never been to Cuba.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole family aspect of it, them being exiled. There's all sorts of things. There's a weightiness there and a respect to my parents. So I'm not fully Cuban, even though I grew up in a Cuban household. Like, my parents never even ate spicy food. Like, too much pepper and it was too spicy for them. But for me, at 2 years old, I was eating, serranos and jalapenos like they were nothing. So growing up in Mexico City, I am Mexican.
Yeah.
But the fact that my parents were Cuban and they became American citizens, it all just became a melting pot. So I'm purely not any of them, but I'm all of them. And it just kind of manifests itself in everything in my life. Everything that I do, I got my hands on a bunch of different things, and I'm not one thing, I'm just a little bit of a bunch. And I found that to be quite liberating. When I finally just stopped worrying about it, it was totally liberating. Who cares? I got a lot of things to choose from.
Yeah, makes life even more rich.
Absolutely.
Hasta que tú decidas regresar.
Movidas regresa.